So for those of you that haven't watched my other video, a while ago I made a video going over Iceborn, which is the story I've been working on since I was like 12, and it is a hot mess and a half. If you want to hear about the writing process of why it's taken so long to finish, that will be linked in the iCard and also in the description below. Go watch it, it's one of my favorite videos. Today we're going to go over the plot more in detail in an attempt for me to kind of talk about the story and figure out where I'm going for it. Also, I hope you like my hair. It's like curling really well today, so I'm really excited about that. Let's get into it. Before we get into the characters, because the characters are the main part of the story, we need to talk about the world. The world of Iceborn takes place in its own fantasy world with its own fantasy realm and countries. So up here we have the country that the main character is from, Scenic. Also, it's not going to show up very well on the right board, so I apologize. But Scenic is the northernmost country. It is the home to Iceborns, who are people with white hair magical powers, specifically ice-related powers. However, Iceborns are illegal, and if you are Iceborn, you will be killed, and all that fun stuff. It is a monarchy. It is ruled by a king. The majority of the land is forest. It's a very large pine forest, essentially. It's not super densely populated because it is a large country and most of it is uninhabitable because of how cold it gets there. Unless you're Iceborn, in which case the cold never bothered you anyway. That was a bad joke. Next up, we have Kairu. Kairu is right below Scenic, and it's in the center of the continent, which basically means that in order to get a lot of other places, you have to travel through Kairu, and because of that, Kairu has kind of been pillaged over and over and attacked over and over. And that is no exception right now because they are currently at war with the country below them, Ruku. We'll get to them later, but to continue with Kairu, Kairu is a mountainous region. I've really struggled with Kairu because I wanted them to be based off of a specific culture, but as time has gone on, they've just kind of become an amorphous blob of a lot of real-life cultures. So, for example, their language is based very heavily on Russian because I know Russian. I base some of their homes and clothing on Tibetan cultures because they live in the mountains, and it's kind of a similar terrain to what I imagine the Kyrians living in. So it's kind of a conglomeration, and I really need to do more world building, but Scenic and Kairu are the most developed countries that I have so far. Ruku is a little bit more complicated, and I haven't spent a lot of time with them. The majority of Ruku is a desert, so similar to Scenic, it doesn't have a lot of population density. A lot of it is very sparse because it is just a desert, and it's uninhabitable. However, a lot of the coastline here is pretty inhabited. The thing with Ruku is that they are attacking Kairu, as mentioned before. Ruku's government is kind of been taken over by this mystery group called the Yuwa, who we'll get into later. And their goal is to reunite the continent. Because of that, they've attacked Kairu first because it's the smallest country with the least amount of defenses. Ruku is run by a dictatorship. Kairu is run by either like some sort of council, or maybe they do have a king, but it's like a constitutional monarchy, so the ruler doesn't actually have that much say. Something along those lines. I haven't really decided because it's not a huge part of the story. As far as countries next door, these two here, there is Eldon. So Eldon is the newest country. Once upon a time it was a part of Scenic, but they rebelled and broke off for reasons I haven't come up with yet. If/when I write a second book for Iceborn, I imagine Eldon is going to play a key part in it. The biggest thing is that Eldon has a very strong alliance with Ruku, but they don't have a strong alliance with anyone else, and they especially hate Scenic, so there are huge walls all around the borders of their country because they do not let basically anyone in or out unless they're Rukarians. And even that's like, they don't always do that. On this side is Operia. Operia is the most progressive out of the 5 countries. They are the most welcoming to magic folk. A lot of Iceborns escape into Operia and become refugees there because Operia allows magic and has laws to protect people with magic. Operia is also a monarchy. It has like a king and queen and stuff. Their main color is purple. A lot of the people wear purple. There's purple in their flag. There's like lavender bushes everywhere. They really love purple. But yeah, so there's the countries. There's kind of the world background. But now let's get into characters. So first up, we have our main character, Z, aka Ziara. Z is the main character, and she's Iceborn, and that's the driving force behind the whole book. So we have her mother, Marion, and her father, who she doesn't know. So Marion raised Z alone in the woods because Z's Iceborn and she had to keep her a secret from the world and that sort of stuff. And then Z has a very close friend that she meets when they're living out in the woods named Koro. Koro is also Iceborn, and his family lives really close to Marion. Marion knows them quite well because they work together on like various farms and, you know, kind of those things that you do when you live in the middle of nowhere. In the draft that I've been working on right now, Z and Koro decide to run off together to Operia so they can live a life more free. Spoilers, they don't make it, and then both Koro and Marion end up passing away. But I think I'm going to change this. The current plan for how Z's family works, by the way, I've changed Z's family like 3 times, so that's fun. Z's mother is going to leave one day and then never come home, so she's dead. Z is going to wander into the woods and meet Koro. He invites her back to his house with his family. His family kind of has heard stuff in the nearby villages about someone who was killed, and so they suspect that it's Z's mother, and so they offer to take her in. And similar thing, they try and run away when they're like 14-ish, maybe a little bit older, and it doesn't go well. Basically, they get discovered by the guard. So, this is Klain. Klain is the captain of the scenic guard. He has like the scar that goes all the way down his face. He's known for being very ruthless and having like no mercy. However, when he finds Z and Koro in the woods, he's immediately like, okay, like he's with a group of other guards and he's like, all right, kill them, you know what to do. And Koro calls out Z's name and says like her whole name. He's like, Ziara, and all that stuff. And Klain recognizes her name. At this point, they've already killed Koro, but he has them stop and he tells them, no, we're taking Z to the castle and the king is going to decide her fate. So we have the king, who is always and forever just the king. I do not have a name for him. In the first draft, his name was Zyko, and that's a terrible name, so we're not doing that. His name is also Zenith for a bit, because I tried to go along with the Z theme, and I haven't found a name I liked, so... But now he's just the king. We'll draw a line between him and Klain, since Klain is the captain of the Royal Guard. Basically, the king decides to keep Z alive for unknown reasons, and basically tells her, alright, well, you know, if you work in the castle, or in your keep, then you can stay here, but, like, no magic. Just kind of, like, don't cause any trouble. And Z's like, okay. Works at the castle for about a year-ish, when the stable hand quits, and she gets put in charge of taking care of the king's horses and animals, because she doesn't mind the muck, and she can go out during the winters to take care of them. Because, again, cold never bothered her anyway. But then a new figure appears in town, and he gets also hired to work at the stables. This is Omar, and he is my favorite character in the entire series, and I love him so much. So Omar is from Cairo, so we're going to put a little K down here, and since Z is Iceborn, we're going to put a little snowflake here. He tells Z that he's like, oh, I left because I didn't want to get drafted into the army and stuff, but Z, you know, as she kind of learns more about Cairo, she kind of realizes that, like, that doesn't totally make a lot of sense. So she knows that he's hiding stuff about his past, but she also doesn't want to talk about her past. And so they just kind of mutually agree to never really discuss each other's past, but they become really good friends. And I love Omar so much. He's probably one of my favorite characters ever. He's honestly the reason I want to write a second book of Iceborn, just so I can write a story from his perspective. Additionally, we have the other of the main trio, Ron. Ron and Omar are friends because Ron's kind of the one that helped Omar get a job at the castle. Ron is also a guard, so he works under and reports to Klain. Because Ron is friends with Omar, Z spends some time with him, but she also doesn't really like him because he is a guard, which, fair enough. So this is our main trio right here. So we're going to draw 2 lines between all of them. So one night, 2 mysterious assassins break into the castle and attempt to kill the king. The king does not die. They ultimately fail. The guards catch up to them, and they capture one of the assassins, who is named Kiram, and so Kiram is dead. We're already up to 3 deaths. We're doing great. However, the assassin number 2 manages to escape, and Z actually runs into the assassin as the assassin is escaping, and it's a whole thing. So because Mystery Assassin got away, the king afterwards sends Z and asks her to come meet with him, which Z, as someone who is part of a race that has famously been killed by the royal family, she is terrified, but Ron is also called to attend the meeting. Z and Ron go to this meeting with the king, and he basically tells them, okay, see, you're going to go to Operia, and you're going to go to, the scenic embassy, and they're going to take care of you, and you're going to leave right now. Ron, you're going to escort her. Z is not very thrilled about this. She doesn't want to spend, 3 months alone with Ron as they travel to Operia. But king's orders, and, she's technically being told she can leave, and she can be free, so what's she going to do? Say no? We're going to draw another line between these two. So these 2 start their journey to Operia. On their journey, they find out some more stuff about Marion, Z's mother, that doesn't seem to totally be adding up. Knocked over my markers. And basically, Z realizes that, I don't think my mom's actually who I thought she was, and there's a lot going on here, and I want answers because I never really got to know her very well because she died. She's like, Ron, you can go back, I'll go figure this out myself, it's fine. And Ron's like, I was told to protect you, I'm going to stay with you. There's maybe a little something else going on between them. Who knows? But basically, these hints that they've received are leading them towards Cairo. And who do they know that's Kyrian? Omar. They go back to the capital, they go to Omar, and they're like, listen, we need your help, we need to go to Cairo. And he's like, absolutely not, the war is raging on there. You guys are idiots. This whole time, Z has had a knife that belonged to her mother. If you remember, I mentioned briefly the Yua. We're going to put a spiky thing around it so you remember that it's important. So the Yua, they are a secret society intent on reuniting the continent. So there's no countries, it's just one big country. Z's mom's knife is a Yua knife, meaning it was owned by a Yua member, meaning Z's mother was a Yua member. And when Omar sees this, he recognizes it, and he's like, you guys are so in over your heads. So he agrees to go with them, reluctantly, but he agrees. Enter part 2. So the main trio enter into Cairo, and immediately things start to seem weird with Omar. Particularly the first night they get attacked, and they find out that Omar is the Tyrian thief. Basically means he stole a very special book from the Prime Minister, but that book contained a lot of state secrets, along with very powerful magic. Basically, he's a fugitive in his own country, and now they're back in his own country, so they're trying to evade the law. When Z and Ron learn about this, they're obviously very upset, but they kind of work it out. They're like, okay, well, we're already here. Might as well just keep going. So one day they enter Ratea, which is this country in Cairo. Not country, this city in Cairo. It's where Omar's family lives. And so we get to meet Omar's family. We'll draw some lines over here. We have his mother, Sonia, his father, Saldi, his brother, Ryo, and his other brother, Kendrick. However, we don't actually meet Kendrick because Kendrick passed away at the beginning of the war. And we can tell there's some kind of tension there. Foremost between Omar and Ryo, but we also sense there's kind of some stuff that happened between Omar and Kendrick. But Omar's parents welcome him with open arms because they're like, oh my gosh, you left and we're so glad you're back now. But Raya was much more apprehensive. He's like, you didn't even say goodbye. We didn't know where you were. I was really hurt. But as they're staying there, the next day, Z and Omar go to a Yua base and to get more information about Z's mother. And this is where Omar kind of explains that Kendrick was part of the Yua. He was one of the bombers in Credenia, which is the act of violence that started the war between Kairu and Ruku, and Kendrick was killed in the chaos and violence. Omar essentially kind of followed Kendrick's footsteps after his death, kind of found out about the Yua, became a part of it, and one of his assignments was to steal the Tyrion books, or a Tyrion book, and he did, and after he did, and he's like a wanted criminal now, he's like, I don't want to do this, I don't want this life, and so he fled to Scenic. There's a bit of a confrontation between Z and Omar and this other Yua member, but it gets worked out, and they get some information about this guy named Sephirin. So Sephirin was friends with Marion, that's all we know about him so far. While they're staying with Omar's family, they once again get attacked by guards who have learned that Omar is staying there. The three manage to sneak out the back of the house. However, there are guards swarming the city. They manage to get Omar and Ron out, but Z gets captured by guards and is taken to like a high security prison. Z is there for several days, weeks even. She is struggling really bad. But then, out of nowhere, she gets rescued by this woman named Tyrion. Tyrion is a Yua member. She is a little bit older than Z, but they're close to the same age. Tyrion's Scenic, so her and Z can communicate pretty easily. But Tyrion rescues Z, takes her back to the Yua base that's nearby. Basically, we learned that it was Tyrion's mission to go and rescue some mysterious Yua member that had been captured at this prison, because basically the Kyrian government accused Z of being a Yua member because she had a Yua knife on her. But obviously, after she rescues her, Tyrion realizes that Z is not actually a Yua member, and learns that Z is looking for her mother, Marion. Tyrion recognizes the name and tells Z, like, don't tell anyone about your mother. Like, she was very powerful both in and outside the Yua, and we don't want people taking advantage of that or people coming after you because of that, so it's your job to keep it secret. And that is where I have it written up to this point. Now, here's the hard part. In the timeline, I have a lot of empty space here. Currently, the plan is to have Tyrion escort Z to Nupik, which is where Sephirin is living. Even though Z is separated at the moment from Omar and Ron, they know that's where they were going to go, is to find Sephirin. So she's hoping that, okay, well, if I go there, hopefully I can meet up with them again. They finally make it to Nupik. They talk with Sephirin. And here's the thing I can't decide. Nupik is kind of in the middle of a battlefield. It's been raided constant times. There's a huge Yua base there, and so Ruku essentially already had seeds in that village. There's been a lot of battles there, and the village has been pretty ransacked. So as they go, here's what I can't decide, is does Z get the information about her mother, and subsequently her father, from Sephirin, or right before they get there, does Sephirin die? Because regardless of when she gets it, I need Sephirin to die in the scene, just because, I don't know, he needs to die. Because here's the thing, even if Z doesn't get the information from Sephirin, Tyrion actually knows everything. Because Tyrion knew Marion. Tyrion is actually the daughter of the king, and she is also the assassin that tried to kill the king. So this is actually Tyrion over here. And Marion, at a time as part of a Yua mission, worked in the castle, so she knew Tyrion. Because Tyrion is the princess, her real name is actually Zyra. I want this to be a spoiler-free thing, but I think we're just gonna have to cave and I'll just have to bleep some things out of this video. At some point around here, Z kind of connects the dots of or gets told, I'm not totally sure how it works. Tyrion knew Marion, Marion knew the king, Marion was on a mission at the castle. The king is Z's father, which subsequently makes her a princess and she has power in the nation, and that's why she wasn't killed. When Z had gone to the castle, Tyrion, aka Zyra, had run away. Essentially, Scenic didn't have an heir. Z was magically alive, which meant, oh, psych, we do have an heir now. And so she was kept alive because they're like, well, we gotta, it's something at least. So Z is having to grapple with the fact that Tyrion is her sister, that she's a princess, kind of what that means for her and her future. At this point, she's been reunited with Ron and Omar. They did meet up with him and they went to New Pact to talk to Sephirin. And so they're kind of in the Kyrian wilderness trying to decide what to do, where to go. Z has been very private about what happened with Koro and her mom. It's just kind of a part of her life she does not talk about very much. You know, as Z has been spending more and more time with Ron, the two have been kind of developing a romance. But one night her and Ron are kind of alone together and they're talking, and she actually goes ahead and tells him everything that happened with Koro and her mom and how she watched them die. And it's a very vulnerable moment for her. As she's telling Ron this, she notices he has this kind of like terrified look on his face. And she's like, what's going on? And he tells her he was there the night that Koro died, so he already knew everything about that. Now, Z hears this, and all she hears is, you killed my best friend. So she freaks out. Prior to this, Tyrion had been toying Z with the idea of like, look, you found out the king's your dad. He sucks. I don't like him. Let's take back the power. Let's go overthrow him. Let's kill him. Let's do it. And Z's like, whoa, hold up. Like, I'm taking a lot of this in. But after the stuff with Ron, she feels totally betrayed. So her and Tyrion go and they decide that she goes up to Tyrion. She's like, all right, we're leaving for Scenic. Let's go. We're gonna go kill the king. Z and Tyrion abandon Ron and Omar and head back to Scenic. They do storm the castle. And this is the other thing I can't decide, is I cannot decide if I want the king to live or die. He's kind of a horrible person and he's not going to change. I don't want him to, he's just bad. And so it would make a lot of sense for him to die, but also I feel like Z is a character that is very anti-murder because she's seen so many people get murdered, but Tyrion isn't. So I think we're gonna have like some sort of moral dilemma. Tyrion ends up killing the king, but due to like regicide laws and stuff, that technically makes her no longer an heir to the throne or something like that. And as such, Z technically becomes the crown princess even though she's younger. Somehow, like, Z ends up like arresting Tyrion and basically becomes the new queen. Omar and Ron catch up with Z. Ron explains to her the Koro situation more in detail and basically tells her that, like, you know, I was really young when it happened. You know, I'm not much older than you. You know, I was really close to your age. And Ron grew up, he's not a noble. He grew up as like a peasant. He worked on like a farm with his dad. He had idolized the guard from a young age. However, after joining the guard, and subsequently joining the Forest Guard, which are the people that go out and kill Iceborns, he kind of saw, like, this is not what I thought it was. Watching Koro die was kind of his first awakening of, like, I think I've made a mistake, and I don't think this is what I actually want for myself, but at this point it's a little too late. But him and Z make up, and Omar's becomes, like, Z's advisor, because she's now a royal. Iceborns are now allowed to live free, and all that jazz, so that's Iceborn. And I don't think that actually helped me figure out the story anymore, but I don't know. I'll work on it tonight, see what I can do. Thank you guys so much for watching me ramble for who knows how many minutes. And I'll see you guys later. Bye!